a lot of the history that's on purpose not shown, or try to
Yeah,
suppress.
exactly. Yeah.
Like, for example, this story about the bananas and, the banana republics, this idea that, one of the most popular fruits that we eat today has a deep history and has actually blood behind
Oh,
it.
yeah, absolutely.
Could
yeah.
you explain a little bit that story?
Yeah, so the banana actually is originally from Southeast Asia, maybe Malaysia, maybe the Papua New Guinea, and then through kind of natural process of the cultural transfer, it reached Africa, possibly in the first millennium, possibly a bit after that. And then it became a kind of a standard crop in Africa. I mean, it's a very fertile fruit. I mean, it can produce the largest amount of carbohydrate given the land mass. Yeah, I mean, 10 times more than potatoes, 100 times more than wheat. Yeah, it's a very, very productive crop. So it became very widespread in Africa. And when the Europeans started invading Africa and starting to uh, trade the Africans as the slaves and setting up plantations in the New World and so on, they started using banana as essentially slave food, yeah? Because bananas grow without much cultivation. Yeah? So when they were managing these slave-based plantations, what they did was to basically give a tiny bit of ration to the enslaved people, and I mean, gave them a little land to grow whatever they could to supplement the diet. And obviously, the enslaved people started growing bananas because that's the most productive crop. Yeah, so it became part of the staple. Yeah, but then later it became a the popular fruit first in the U.S. and later in Europe. And the Americans started setting up these massive banana plantations in Central America, like and the northern part of the South America. Yeah? So the Guatemala, the Honduras, the Mexico's a bit too dry for it, but the Colombia, the Ecuador, yeah. And then when they were running these the massive banana plantations in the late 19th, early 20th century, basically the American government ensured that these the governments of these countries are super friendly to the banana companies. Yeah, the United Fruit Company, Standard Fruit Company, which now trade in names like Chiquitos and yeah, is it Chiquita? Yeah, yeah. The more the Dole and more friendly names, but basically when the governments of these countries try to control these companies even a tiny bit, like trying to enforce labor law that requires that the banana plantation workers are given toilets. Yeah, yeah. The American government would put pressure on the governments of these countries, and if they refuse, they would engineer the coup d'état, yeah, by supporting more right-wing people in the country, or they did it more than dozen times, 2 dozen times in a span of like 40 years, invade a country. Yeah? I mean, U.S. Marines would go in and, yeah, so all of this the bloody history behind bananas was kind of fictionalized in uh, my favorite novel, The 100 Years of Solitude by the Colombian writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And he writes about this the incident in a fictionalized and somewhat exaggerated form about this famous banana massacre, which happened in 1928 in Colombia, which was basically about workers in one of the banana plantations owned by the American company staged a long-running strike, and then the U.S. government said, well, if you don't break this up, we are going to invade your country. Yeah? We're going to send in the Marines and break this up. So you better do it. Yeah. So the Colombian army tried to break it up, and the account is a bit confused, but essentially they started shooting these workers down. Yeah. So the estimate is at least a few dozen people, and up to 2,000 people are killed in this banana massacre. And then, in the Garcia Marquez the novel, it is kind of the number is expanded, and then the the real fictionalized bit is that the banana company kind of puts all these dead bodies on the trains and carries them off, and then they pretend that it never happened. Yeah, yeah. So for well, I mean, if you begin to think about this, the bloody history of these food items, I think that we might as well starve ourselves to death. Yeah. Because so many crops that we eat today came from the Latin America, which had the hundreds of years of oppression and exploitation. Potatoes came from there. Tomatoes came from there. And then they kidnap people from Africa to grow sugar and coffee. Yeah. In the Caribbean, they created this banana republics, to eat bananas, So okay, I mean, I don't think that not eating those things and dying is not an option. So at least we could be aware of the history behind all these things, I mean, it's very, very, bloody history. I mean, I don't have the chapter called tea, which I almost had in the book, but tea, in order to have the good supply of tea from China, Britain essentially staged the Opium War, because the story is China had the monopoly over tea, and the British fell in love with it, and they were running huge trade deficits, and they tried to kind of make China buy more things from Britain, and the Chinese emperor said, well, we have more of better things. Why should we trade with you? Which was a reasonable position to take. So the British started selling opium to China. They grew opium in the colonies in India and sold opium to China. And when the Chinese government tried to not even completely ban it, but regulate the trade, they found some excuse and just invaded the country and forced it open, made the opium trading legal, and deprived the right of Chinese government to set its own tariffs, and they imposed I mean, many countries have done that to many others, that impose what is known as extraterritoriality, which means that when a foreign citizen, citizens of the stronger countries who signed these treaties, foreign citizens commit crime in China, they cannot be tried in China. They have to be sent back home, because the Chinese legal system is below standard. Can you believe?
So they did all that over some tea.
Yeah. Well, of course, it wasn't just tea. I mean, China was a major producer of silk and porcelain and many things that Europeans wanted. But, yes, I mean, that in terms of food, it was tea. So when you drink your afternoon tea, morning cup of tea, you could see blood there.